Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last round of Stage 1 of Day 2 here at the World Magic Cup, and it's a doozy. We have Team USA versus Team Israel. Niv Shmuley just said to his teammate Shahar, Shenhar, remember which team you're on. and it's the same team Luis plays for, Team Packrat.
Yep, that's Shahar. Israel makes disgusted noises, and little do they know, but Josh actually just drew his third land.
And that means he's fully operational.
So, interestingly enough, Shahar drew an Abrupt Decay, but it was a turn too late, as he asks what you never want to hear as a Judge, do you have rat tokens? that Abrupt Decay's got a sting. A turn earlier, and you know, this would be a completely different game. As is, Shahar's going to have to contend with Packrat this game. Yeah,
and this could, as you mentioned, this could very well be the finals matchup that we see in the World Championship. Both of these players are playing on Sunday in the semifinals there.
Yep, and even though it will be with 75 card decks instead of 40, we still have, you know, a pretty interesting player matchup since Josh and Shahar have played a lot of games against each other.
Right, Shahar's the most recent addition to the Channel Fireball team.
Yeah, we probably gonna have some new ones for the next Pro Tour. We'll figure those out soon.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
But yeah, Shahar is actually, I guess he came on at kind of the same time that Patrick Sullivan did for the last Pro Tour, Dragon's Maze.
So 2/3/3 rats bash in.
Rats foiled again as Shahar's kind of hoping to set up a combat where an Abrupt Decay kind of leads to that domino effect we were talking about.
Right.
But it's going to be tough here. I mean, Josh is just not at a low life total. He does not have to block here, and I would not expect him to do so.
Is there any kind of algorithm that you figured out for playing with rats in terms of like how you play your lands? Like, you know, assuming a turn 2 rat, do you continue playing out lands? Do you try to get to a turn where you can activate twice? Is that?
It depends mostly on your hand. If you haven't mulliganed, you know, say, and you have enough cards, going up to 6 mana and being able to make 2 rats is really good. If it doesn't look like you're going to hit 6, sometimes you do want to stop on 3. But usually there's enough difference between 3 and 6 that you can afford to play your 4th and 5th land, and it doesn't cost you making any rats.
Shahar scoops up the cards. He had maybe held out some hope that he was going to be able to cast a Sire of Insanity, and possibly stabilize the board. We'd like to thank Card House Games for being an official card retailer here at Worlds Week. Enter the code AMS10 when ordering at cardhousegames.com and get 10% off your next purchase. And for more information, you can visit cardhouse.com. We're gonna stay with these guys. I don't think we've really seen we've only seen a small sliver of what Josh's deck can do. Talk to us a little bit about the deck that Josh ended up building.
So they actually had a lot of interesting builds. Ben Stark and I watched the U.S. Open, and they not only have Packrat, they also have Mizzia Mortars, and kind of their first inclination was to make a Rakdos deck that had Packrat and Mizzia Mortars and Ixava Blood Witch. But because for a number of reasons, one of which was they felt that deck might have actually been, you know, too good. It had all their good cards, even though that sometimes
Ben didn't believe decks could be too good.
Right, and this is something we discussed, that maybe that was a trap. It looks like they decided to split the Packrat and the Mortars, giving the Rakdos deck, which is by far the best suited to use Mortars, that, and then building a kind of Orzhov Splash Blue deck for Josh.
And interestingly, the Orzhov Splash Blue deck is not the deck that has the Sphinx's Revelation.
Right, because like I said, their initial build was Rakdos, Azorius, and then 5-color green. And they ended up with Rakdos Esper Aggro, which sounds kind of weird, but it's mostly just Orzhov splashing far and away because they have 2 of them. And then putting the Sphinx's Revelation into Joe's deck, which is the double Axebane Guardian kind of ramp deck.
Yeah, we thought at first it was going to be a Gatekeeper deck, but it really is more of a ramp deck.
Yeah, and I think they're even electing not to play all the Gatekeepers they could. So it's an interesting build decision. It's good you know, problems to have. They have so many good cards. How do they split them? It's not often the conundrum where, man, we can make 1 good deck and 2 bad decks. But here they can make 3 good decks. They just have to figure out which one wants their powerhouses.
As someone who's played on multiple national teams, maybe you can speak to this. I remember the first time Josh was a national champion. he was perhaps a little passive with his team. I remember even seeing him like maybe not communicating as much with them while they were playing, like maybe not wanting to be intrusive, or not having that sort of camaraderie maybe that he has with this team. But for this event, he has been a very, almost uncharacteristically for Josh Utter-Leyton, forceful personality on this team.
Yeah, and I think part of it was that, a couple years ago, he was a little less sure of himself, a little less experienced as a Magic player. And,
like a couple hundred pro points ago.
Right, and, a bunch of top eights. His natural inclination is to be a little reserved. That is kind of what Josh is like. But in this event, he's been basically the opposite of that. Like, I think he realized he's by far the most experienced member of the team, and when his teammates kind of need guidance, he's the one who has to provide it. He's the one who has to put his foot down when maybe they're going down a path he doesn't like. And I'm not saying, his word is law, because certainly it's always been a discussion. But when they have a question, he's often the one who has to come up with the answer.
Yeah, no, I saw him answering things very definitively, saying this is what we are going to do, speaking in very, direct, clear sentences. And then you get a look at his resume. I mean, again, not eligible for the Hall of Fame for 3 more years?
No, more than that, actually. 2008 was his first Pro Tour.
Oh, my God.
His Pro Tour Berlin, actually, was his... I remember he didn't test with him, but
right.
he tested with a lot of the other guys from Northern California, like Ricky Sitter and Ian Bartolome, guys who don't always play all the Pro Tours these days, but that was that contingent, and they all played Zoo, and they didn't do quite as well as they had hoped. So that was his introduction to the Pro Tour.
And in that short span, he already has 4 top 8s. He's got, he's been on 2 national teams now. 7 Grand Prix top 8s. I mean, just a tremendous
and
player.
Very solid win percentages in both.
Yeah, and we've even seen him, sort of fostering some, like Jacob Wilson winning Grand Prix Chicago.
Yeah.
Was winning it with a Josh Utter-Leyton deck.
Yep, that was they're playing the same deck, and then Jacob actually beat him in the finals of that tournament.
And again, although Shahar Shenhar is playing for Team Israel and lives in Israel now, he grew up in the same area as you guys in the Bay Area.
Yeah, we're all, Northern California, within about an hour radius. Some of us in Sacramento, some, in Oakland or San Jose. But we did play a lot, and like sometimes you'd have local drafts where there was, now 5 people who are regulars on the Pro Tour that, 5 years ago that just wasn't the case, but that was just the local drafts we had.
So someone should bottle that water and sell it in gaming stores.
Yeah.
So we see Shahar is going down to 6 cards here.
Yeah, there was some debate when I left Northern California, according to Matt Sperling, who'd be the king of the North. But it looks like Josh is reaching for the crown here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Shahar going to 6.
Does obviously it has to. Seeing a Packrat from your opponent, does that change the way you mulligan?
You would think that it would have a bigger impact than it does. The thing is, it's still Magic. They only, they don't draw Packrat in their opening hand that often, and you can't really mulligan a good hand.
Right. But by the way, the entire Magic community listening to us goes, is right now shaking their heads going, yes, they do, Luis. They always draw it.
Yeah, I mean, they do always draw it. I will concede to that fact. But in this case, like, look at Josh's hand here. He's got, Boros Mastiff, Cartel Aristocrat, and then 2 Syndicate Enforcers. So let's say Shahar mulliganed a good hand in search of a removal spell. He's just going to lose to this normal hand.
Right. He drew the discard to Packrat portion of his deck.
Yeah, I mean, and, Cartel Aristocrat and Mastiff are fine. Enforcers are more, discard to Packrat mid-game cards.
Yeah.
But I think Shahar he's good enough and experienced enough that he's not going to make a mulligan decision based on a Packrat. Granted, you should, scour your sideboard for every answer you possibly can find, but you shouldn't mulligan a hand that, let's say, has a 3-drop and a 4-drop. Like, this hand can't beat a Packrat. It's like, surprise, most hands can't.
On the back table, by the way, we have a result. Niv Daniele is up 1 game to nothing against
Daniel
Cicchetti, yeah. And so I looked at Daniele's list, and he is playing a beating of a Boros deck.
Yeah, and he's actually playing against Team USA's Rakdos deck, so this is going to be a fast match. I mean,
we may not get them on camera, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that Mortars is not going to get kicked all that often. There won't be very many creatures in play on both sides. Like, there's going to be a lot of creatures smashing in and trading, and games are going to be ending. So Shahar, you know what Shahar's going to do on turn 2, right?
So let me rephrase my question. If you know you have a Packrat in your deck, does it change the way you mulligan?
So that actually does. That means that the borderline hands I'm much more likely to mulligan because you know that you have a get out of jail free card. Yeah. So Boros Mastiff, I mean, it's raining rats and dogs here, but I don't think that the dogs are going to come out on top. So there are a few reasons to make a Packrat main phase here. Shahar might consider doing that because of profit loss.
Sure.
But Josh doesn't actually...
Shrivel effects.
Yeah, like Josh could have done it against Shahar's potential Golgari charm. Both those effects do end up leaving you with a Packrat in play still, so if you do it in response, but it's still not the end of the world.
Much more happy-looking Shahar Shenhar this game.
Yeah, this discipled old ways is not really what you're looking for.
Plays his 4th land.
And drew a card which I would be surprised if it saw play this game, Rurik Thar, which isn't a very nice card, but no, there we go.
First one out.
Yeah, he's Thar from being able to cast it here, and actually put up a Rurik Thar commander deck on a daily MTG, but didn't realize Garruk Relentless is actually not legal in a red-green deck since it flips to black.
Oh.
I would say I've gotten more than a few emails on that subject, which is all well and good. I deserve it.
People are pretty passionate about that.
Hey, I mean, it was a learning experience.
But you know what I would tell them? I would say, if you want to play that card in your commander games with your friends, just go ahead and do it.
Don't let Sheldon hear you say that.
Yeah.
So Cynic... Oh, apparently Sheldon confirms that is actually allowed.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Shahar plays a Syndicate Enforcer, or rather Raptor does, and Shahar still just gets to attack if he wants for 12 here.
Yeah, and Josh is at 14.
Yeah. I mean, Shahar is trying to think, what can Josh have that will deal, a bunch of damage to me? Esper's good at a lot of things. It is not good at having, +2/+0 to your entire team.
Ready
and that sort
and
of
Willing
effect.
would be pretty sick in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you ever get the 6 mana to cast
No, but
it.
if you did, it would be sweet. I mean, Profit Loss can duel an additional 3, but Shahar is not close to just dying. Looks like he's happy enough just dealing 9, though. So Shahar's kind of hedging here. He's keeping Grizzly Spectacle up just in case Josh does something like maybe an Unflinching Courage, something that would really swing the race.
Change the race, sure.
Though Josh actually has drawn a very competitive hand against Packrat, having 2-drop into 2-drop, and then a 4-drop, and then an Azorius Justiciar plus a Smite here means that he can actually mount a pretty successful defense while still attacking.
I don't know that we've ever seen someone beat a Packrat on camera.
Yeah, and I can't remember seeing it, and I think I've been on camera with my own Packrat, and I don't remember losing. So, since I had the opportunity to play with it at 2 Grand Prix in a row.
Certainly decks with Packrat have lost, not to say.
Yes. So yeah, Josh taking advantage of the extort here. Shahar does get to make a blocker here if he wants, which Josh actually doesn't want Shahar to do. But I think if he doesn't attack here, he's not winning the game, so he's got to go for it.
Shahar shrugs.
Yeah, he
reaches for his pen. Not the pen trick, or
nope.
Nope.
So Josh is able to kind of take advantage of Shahar's conservative nature, because Shahar does play very well, but he doesn't. He's risk averse. He's a little like Martin Yuza in that sense. And here he's not looking at losing the race, so he'd rather just take the 7 and not potentially lose to a combat trick. Had he known what Josh's next play was, he may have blocked, but that is why Josh waited on it.
Oh.
Another thing Josh has going for him is that Cartel Aristocrat can get in for 2 unimpeded. Just
right. No matter what. The last 2, it can certainly manage to pull off.
Yeah, so here you go, Shahar. The mulligan really taking its toll here, since now he's a card short of being able to make 2 Packrats if he had a 6 land.
Right.
And had he been able to discard a different card, he might have been able to play a 6 land, make 2 rats. Instead, he's going to settle for just attacking with maybe the 2 rats.
I feel like this is going to be another case, though, of like good valiant fight by Josh, and then ultimately the rat.
See, again, here, Shahar could go for the victory if he just cast a Grizzly Spectacle before attacking here. If he just casts Grizzly Spectacle and attacks for 8, he actually just wins. So he decided to just hold on to the Spectacle and wait on that, and so instead got smited. Is going to still deal 3 or 4 to Josh. It looks like he's just maybe going with 3.
Right.
And then still has enough rats back to block, so Josh is definitely not out of it yet. I like Josh's aggressive line though. Again, you don't win the long game versus Packrat very often.
Yeah, I mean maybe he draws another Justiciar here, or
yeah, I mean I don't know what he's got. Far and away is 2 in his deck. If he draws one of those, then he could potentially just that kills 2 Packrats, and then he'd actually just be winning handily.
Might actually lose.
Shahar wondering how he got himself into this situation. He is going to be that guy, maybe. I actually think Shahar's still ahead here.
I do too, but you could see a scenario where it could happen.
So here, this is a common thing that happens to people is that you're really far ahead, so you're willing to take small disadvantages because you're so far ahead. And here, Shahar, in order to play around like a big swingy card, is actually losing to a bunch of small, low-impact cards. I'm not saying he's playing wrong, because I don't think that's the case. I think he's worried about losing to, again, something along the lines of unflinching courage and, in Esper colors, instead letting himself get chipped away by commons.
And again, you talked about his conservative nature. So he could have gone for the win last turn.
Yeah, I don't know what he was playing around when Josh had an Orzhov Guildgate up.
Right.
So I think maybe he just forgot about Smite, but...
Or maybe, is there any point also where you put, like, Josh on representing Smite so you'll think about Smite?
Yeah, the problem is if Shahar just goes for it, he just wins. So I think that's a little tough to resist, but he is still ahead, and Josh really did need to draw far away this turn. Josh can this turn play 2 creatures or just play 1 creature and extort. He's facing down potentially 4 5/5 rats attacking him, and he's not looking at great attacks himself.
Right, but if he can stay alive a turn, far and away, that on his next draw step might allow him to steal the win.
He also has Cartel Aristocrat, so he could play 2 creatures, attack with just the Cartel Aristocrat after sacking a creature, and put Shahar to 5, but then he's just so far away from actually winning the game with Aristocrat, even if he does extort. So this is a tough turn for Josh, because he's not presented with a ton of great options. Granted, if he leaves a bunch of creatures back, Shahar is not that close to being able to kill him, since Shahar can't necessarily send in all the rats without potentially having combat go poorly for him. Of course, if Josh does tap out, okay, so Josh is going to just extort with the Syndicate Enforcer. I know Magic players. I know as a Magic player, I always feel so much better when my opponent's tapped out. Because when they're not tapped out, that one face-down card is literally 15 different cards. That, but when they are tapped out,
right, it's much easier to see the Smite when it's 1 mana up versus having 6 mana up. You're like, what could he have? Because he could have anything.
And that's why last turn Shahar. With 1 mana up, you can reduce the range of cards to a pretty low amount. With 6 mana up, at that point, you have to think of so many cards.
How do you like the Sire of Insanity Packrat combo?
I mean, it's not really a combo except for the fact that if you have Packrat, you can just discard the Sire. And if you don't have Packrat, Sire is a very powerful card. So Shahar just bashing in with everyone. Josh has to block all the rats at the very least. So he has to decide, how can I block to kill one of the rats and then maybe make all the other rats die? Because once you kill one, one dies and he becomes a 4/4, and then the rest die and they become a 3/3, and then so forth. So Shahar might actually get him pretty good with Grizzly Spectacle here, though I actually don't think Josh can get Shahar all that good, even if Shahar doesn't have any cards here. He can double block to kill 1 rat, but then the block on the next rat never kills it, so the whole line of rats is safe. So Josh just throwing up his hands in disgust. A second Smite would have been nice, though.
Yeah.
Because Shahar passed with no effects there, because Josh wasn't killing any rats, if Josh had been able to wait till end of combat and then smite the rat, then they all would have died. So that would have been pretty sweet.
Not a far and away.
Yeah, that would have been far and away his best draw if he did draw it, but he's staring down.
Instead, we're looking at a different Tom Cruise movie, Mission Impossible.
Yeah. He's still representing something here. I mean, he's got to attack. Shahar, the thing is, Shahar's not going to go to 1, not against an extort creature, so he's either going to use the Grizzly Spectacle or make a rat, and in both cases, Josh doesn't have a way to punish him. I mean, there are certainly cards Josh could have that would get around one or the other, and now, even though Shahar has the win 100% locked up here, he has to think about all those cards.
Right. And you always just attack in case your opponent has a brain fart and says,
it's happened to all of us,
I'll go
right?
to 1.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes your opponent
cracks a fetch land when they're at 1.
Right.
It's happened on the biggest stage.
I mean, I've heard stories of certain Hall of Famers shocking opponents' creatures when their opponents are at 2. So.
Yeah, it's happened. In fact, both instances are the same person.
Yeah. But, all right, Josh, playing tight, sacking it to the Cartel Aristocrat, dealing 2 to Shahar, playing his Keating Apparition, or maybe not, and just passing the turn, seeing Shahar attacks. As Shahar now has to go back in the tank, what could Josh have? Like, what kind of fogs are there? Because in situations like this, if you attack with too many things and get fogged, that could be bad. If you attack with too few and die to 2 spot removal spells. Of course, Blue White doesn't have very many fogs, so. All right, and Rats.
So far in this match, it is Rats 1 and Rats 1. Both players
and
have
the
played.
Rats have won.
Yeah, both players have played a turn 2 Packrat, and both players have held their serve.
It was a much closer turn 2 Packrat. It was extremely close to beating turn 2 Packrat.
So it sounds like we're going to take a look at the match between Niv Shmuley and qualifiers for the next Pro Tour begin August 17th, and the format is sealed deck. You could be on the big stage for a Pro Tour Born of the Gods taking place February 21st through 23rd in Valencia, Spain. For more information, visit wizards.com/PTQ. Do you ever miss the PTQs?
I actually do. People always think that I'm making it up, but I mean, like I said, I got into Magic because I just played at PTQs as just a tournament, and I kind of miss playing in them. I'm not saying I want to play in a 450 person PTQ, but the 120 person PTQs I started with were pretty fun.
There we see Syndic of Tithes is locked down with
Runner's Bane.
Runner's Bane, yeah.
And we actually have got kind of the Gatekeeper mirror where, Joe's not really necessarily playing his Gatekeepers, but he's playing Axebane Guardians, and Niv is playing, looks like a pair of Opal Lake Gatekeepers in his deck, as well as the Sunspire Gatekeepers. Yeah,
he's basically playing an Azorius deck, splashing green, and he's got a lot of non-basic lands in his deck. Many of his lands come into play tapped.
Yeah, well, Burning Earth are not in this format, luckily for him. And...
oh, you've got to love his hand. Inspiration,
Thought
Opal
Flare.
Gatekeeper,
Thought Flare, Simic Gate. Yeah, I have to say I'm pretty jealous right now. Not only because he's playing in the tournament, but also because look at that hand.
Beetleform Mage.
Joe doing something which a lot of players don't do as much often as they should. He's tapping the Axebane Guardian, so even though it produces any color, he doesn't need those colors, and now he's leaving 2 lands untapped to pump the Beetleform Mage.
Right.
That way his Axebane Guardian doesn't die to removal and leave him unable to pump it.
Right. Or even a situation where your opponent bounces your Axebane Guardian at the end of the turn, untaps, and then does something to your Beetleform Mage, and you have an untapped land.
Yeah, it's the same thing as in Legacy. Like, say this was Legacy all of a sudden. He would have wanted to tap the Gruul Guildgate and leave a forest untapped, so Wasteland doesn't get you. You want to leave your basics untapped there. So it just all goes back to thinking of what your opponents can play. So Niv, holding on to the Gatekeepers.
Thinking about what could go wrong.
Right. I mean, I say that a lot, but that is what you have to think about. I mean, a lot of games of Magic are yours to win, so you really don't need to figure out how you're going to lose them. Niv, passing on the chance to play Opal Lake Gatekeepers in order to cast Inspiration. Well, it looks like he already cast the Inspiration. Passing on a chance to cast the Gatekeepers in order to not, to miss drawing his card here.
And not just play Pillarfield Ox.
Yeah, and this is one of the rare situations where Hallowed Fountain in his hand is actually worse than a gate.
In my experience, it's not that uncommon in this block limited format.
Yeah. So he also gets to extort by waiting a turn, which he did, and I think that he's kind of forced into playing the Gatekeepers, even though it can't block any of Joe's creatures. With Thought Flare and another Gatekeepers in hand, he is not really going to have time to cast both Gatekeepers against 7 points of power. It's also not really going to have time to survive against 7 points of power necessarily, but that is his goal. Finally drew a second gate there.
Draw a card and extort you for 1. Is this heaven?
It is funny that the draw card next door didn't synergize well because he drew a Concordia Pegasus that he would have much rather have not played so it could trade with the Drakewing. Oh, that's not a good sign.
It's not good.
When your opponent declines to hit you for 4 with Beetle Form Mage
I can call.
Oh.
and the combo,
He's like, I'm not even going to show you the cards I draw.
hey, there's something to be said for not slow rolling there. So we've got Blaster Genius. Take a look at the next game, but discarding a split card which does 8.
So he attacked for Niv was at 11. He attacked for 3. 8 with Beck and Call, discarded to the Blaster Genius. Draw some cards as a bonus if you really must. You can play Magic at a store near you every Friday. Earn Planeswalker points and battle against your friends in Friday Night Magic. August FNM promo card is Dimir Charm. Visit wizards.com/FNM to find a store near you.
So it looks like we might be looking at the third match here.
We are going to see the Boros versus Rakdos matchup.
With Daniele up a game here. And so here's where you can tell that Shahar is actually not just from the U.S., as Team Israel gets to communicate there with the U.S. none the wiser.
Yeah, Scotland was bragging about their ability to talk in English and not have their English-speaking opponents understand them.
Well, that is one way to get around it.
Or no, he's at 11.
I'm at 11, you're at 7.
Yeah. Sorry, I have the same thing. Sorry, it's my turn, right?
Yeah, it's right.
Okay.
Now that they've clarified life totals and whose turn it is.
This looks like a close game, and Cicchetti has both a Weapon Surge and a Trader's Instinct, and looks like a Viashino Shanktail in hand.
Oh.
So he's got a ton of tricks, 4 mana, 3 attackers. I mean, there's going to be some action this turn, especially if you look at both sides. All the creatures are much more well-suited to attack than anything else. So,
And his opponent is what we've established a good thing when you're playing Magic, tapped out.
yep.
Go to attacks.
So
Trigger.
Cicchetti has to worry about taking lethal since Niv is representing 8 damage on the backswing, but because he's attacking for 10 on the board, he could hope that Niv's like, all right, I'll go to 1. But obviously that Israel's not just going to just do that without thinking about it. And because also he's got multiple tricks in his hand that would finish Niv off if he doesn't block.
But Weapon Surge is also just a bloodbath waiting to happen here.
I mean, we've just come into this game, but I don't think it actually looks good for Israel here. I think they're forced to make some kind of block and take a bunch of damage. Granted, we can't really see Israel's hand yet. If we know what they've got in their hand, let's just take a look. We might be able to see a combat trick on their side, which could let them deal lethal on the next turn. But looks like mugging and aerial maneuver are the 2 cards that they're going to be able to cast on this next turn. Punish is just too far out of range. He's never getting to 5 mana this game.
But if he doesn't block, then we're not going to get to a next turn, right?
Yeah, so he's got to block something, and so their best chance Israel's best chance of killing the U.S. is to block one of the creatures, take a bunch of damage, but hopefully not lethal, and then assemble another creature to battalion the Boros elite there. Right now, they do not have access to that, and regardless, they actually
can't if he could just put the Boros elite in front of one creature and Cicchetti doesn't play another creature, theoretically he can just kill him with the aerial maneuver.
Almost. He'd be 1 short because unlike Tom Martell, you can actually get mugged. Mugging doesn't actually hit players, so he would. So it looks like. All right, it looks like they just didn't block. They figured if they blocked with anything, they were going to end up not being able to present lethal, and then they would be too far behind. So I do think that
the aerial maneuver is only +1,
it's +1.
Yeah. I'm confusing it with various other white combat tricks.
All of which do different things. But I think that was a good block, though. If you block with anything there, you're going to lose a creature, maybe 2, and you're not going to be able to attack back. So you're losing to a trick anyway. You might as well just take it. If he doesn't have a trick, you're probably just going to win.
Right. So in hindsight, you should block, but at the time that you're making the decision, it's correct to not block.
Yeah, I mean, even though he lost the game because he didn't block, if you're Israel there, you lose more points by blocking.
Show off your Magic colors by purchasing new Planeswalker apparel at mtgmerch.com. And you know, lost in the hubbub of that match isn't that a a U.S. victory?
Looks like Josh has to win here for that to be the case. And we might get a game here that does not involve a Packrat on either side. Oh, nope.
Oh, the back match was still 1-1. I'm sorry, I thought that was the final match. We have another turn 2 Packrat. Oh my gosh.
Look, these players aren't both in the World Championship and the World Magic Cup because they don't draw Packrat. Sunspire Griffin is a good draw here.
Yeah.
Shahar deciding whether to bluff the attack, but come on, no one ever, has never blocked there. So Josh has a good draw to fight against Packrat with multiple flyers, and then the Justiciar, which basically blocks 3 Packrats on the critical turn.
And he has
he even has the Assault Griffin as well.
Oh wow. Assault Griffin, which has first strike.
It's a
3-2.
It's a 3-2 flyer. So Shahar's got an Augur Spree. Once you've made Packrats, though, you're kind of locked into making Packrats because they get so much better the more turns you make them, that it's hard to like take a break in order to not cast them.
So he attacks with 2. Josh does not block.
Josh could trade here, but Josh actually doesn't want to block because he's in for the race here, I think.
Right.
That's what would lead him to not blocking. So take a look at one of the cards that Shahar's got, which will kill any of Josh's creatures. I guess if Packrats get up to 5/5s, you could hit for 9, but I don't think that's going to happen this game. Israel. Usually it's fairly interesting to listen to the table talks, but in this case I can only speculate on what they're discussing. Though it is whether they should just make a rat and hit Josh for 6, which looks like what they're going to do. So
Discards a
Rust Scarab. Again, doing its finest work right now.
Yeah. It has never been better in all of its time in this block.
Yeah, then taking off its mask and actually revealing it was a Packrat all along.
Another flyer.
Oh, and Josh even drew a Cartel Aristocrat. That was, a good draw. Anything you can play in a quick game like this is something that you're looking for.
Right, if you can get 2 creatures on the table on the same turn.
So now their discussion is because Grim Roustabout costs 2, you can actually play it the same turn as discarding to Packrat. So you've got to figure out whether you want to do both and potentially not be able to make more rats, or just make the 1 rat and take no other action.
It's hard to imagine that you want a Grim Roustabout, though, with everything being up in the air there. And
yeah, it is unlikely they actually cast it, but that is something that we're thinking about. They also have to decide whether they want to just deal 9 and cast Augur Spree, or just discard like the Roustabout. You don't really want to discard the 6th land because you might want to make 2 rats next turn if you don't intend on casting Augur Spree.
setting up the mythical 9-1.
Yeah, the 9-1 rat. That's their whole end game. That rat's going on a killing spree. So Augur Spree does, if it kills the Assault Griffin, Shahar could potentially buy himself another turn.
Oh. Looks like he's going to discard the land.
Potentially looking at chumping the Cartel Aristocrat with the Grim Roustabout here. If he's discarding the land, I would imagine that he wants to cast the Grim Roustabout. Since if you're not casting Grim Roustabout this turn, you might not have a chance to cast it anywhere else. So definitely not unleashing that thing.
Did he say on a leash?
I think he said no unleash. Though it looks like they might be debating that still. All right, so this does leave Shahar in kind of a good position, except he doesn't know about the Justiciar. So Josh has to think, Josh has to stop lethal. Like, it might have been a consideration to unleash the Grim Roustabout just because it would present lethal, because it'd be a 2/2. And that would leave Shahar with 5 lethal attackers, but
Josh is at 2.
Josh is at 2. Shahar has to have considered the Azorius Justiciar here. So now you get to lock down 2 things. Josh does have to attack with his flyers in order to to try and kill Shahar. But Shahar, because he has Augur Spree, does get to kill one of Josh's 2 blockers and attack with just the 2 Packrats. And I think this time he's going to cast his removal spell before attacking.
Yeah, this time we won't see the conservative play.
No. Josh needs a tragic slip here to survive. Shahar even drew a Death's Approach, so it actually could have you know, been another pseudo removal though.
Oh yeah, sorry. yeah.
I mean, he's got to go for it here. He's facing potentially lethal flyers. And there's the Swift Justice we were talking about. Shahar thinking about Swift Justice aloud here. Though I think if he attacks with the Grim Restobat, maybe Swift Justice doesn't even do it. But
as soon as he takes his hands off the Packrat, Josh extends his.
Yeah.
Congratulate him on the win.
I mean, if you're dead, you know you're dead. Like, you didn't, no point in making blocks and pretending. Shahar had an opportunity to lose there by targeting Cartel Aristocrat with Augur Spree, but of course he's not going to do that.
Didn't think about the rat that we were making, so we wanted a blocker for the Cartel Aristocrat. Like the rat that we were making for the extra damage.
Yeah, the decider.
I was debating on boarding me Drowning Filth on the draw to kill your 2 Packrat.
Yeah. If you're gonna cast it, yeah.
Well, we're green black.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so right.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Nobody here. Can I start?
You still need to have it. Like, it's so bad.
Interesting listening to the table talk after
Yeah.
the match.
Here I'm talking about maybe bringing in Drowning Filth.
Yeah, it's an interesting sideboard card. I mean, we were talking about how it doesn't really work as like an archetype, but it is a good sideboard card.
So now we're going to go to game 3 of the final match, back table. The match we assumed would be done first.
Yeah.
Rakdos versus Boros.
It is for elimination, and Niv did have a turn on Borosylate, which is huge, since that is, you know, Wild Ducado's banned in Modern, right? So, he's got a 2-drop to follow it up with.
It looks, is that a Skinbrand Goblin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Shiketi's going to really need to have a relevant play this turn, whether it's a creature or a removal spell, or he's going to find himself fairly far behind.
An Electrickery would be pretty sweet here.
Yeah, that would be insane. He didn't strike out. He's got a Fire Fist there for his 2-drop.
Card we've seen in Constructed this weekend.
In the US team's decks, actually. Now, due to how Battalion works, even though a normal aggressive deck would rather just attack, trade, and get a little damage through, sometimes Battalion decks are just vastly going to prefer playing a 3rd creature and saying go, waiting until you have the full 3 to attack with. And it looks like they have some good options here, so that could spell difficulty for the US team. So they're choosing to smash.
Now, Shiketi definitely trades here, right?
Yeah, I would imagine that he does.
He decides that the Skinbrand Goblin is, even though the Boros Elite might represent more damage later in the match, he'd rather just mitigate Battalion and get the bigger threat off the table. There's a Court Street Denizen for Daniele.
Court Street Denizen does kind of make me want to not make that attack there, because if you can tap your opponent's blockers, you don't really need to trade. Another reason that the US team might want to block the 2-1 instead of the 1-1 is in a removal-heavy deck, which the Rakdos deck is, you can try to stop your opponent from getting Battalion, leaving the lead as kind of a 1-1. Like, that's the one you want to strand.
Right.
Though it actually worked out fairly well for Israel that they waited.
The Snare Squad comes down and taps.
It taps immediately and will start tapping later, too. Just being able to attack and tap, and then with the Denizen play, just immediately stop a blocker. But by trading the turn prior, it gets to attack for 3 instead of potentially more, but leaves the Court Street Denizen alive.
What do you do on this next turn? Like he's got an Augur Spree in his hand. He can kill one of these 3 creatures. Which is the one you want to die?
I think that the Hazda Snare Squad is the most consistently dangerous. By killing it, you do make it so the Boros Elite does less damage. And even though he does have a steady stream of white creatures, you have to assume he's going to run out eventually.
And we see a Pyrewild Shaman in his hand, by the way.
Yeah, Pyrewild Shaman is definitely a threat here.
If anyone's ever played with Hammer of Bogarden, in Limited, this card might be better.
Looks like they're killing the 2-2. And
Oh, why guys? I'm sorry, I'm putting the wrong thing in the graveyard. Sorry.
I don't think the US wants to auger spree their own Warmind infantry there. So has the Snare Squad, gets in. I think that you just block here. It's just a kind of free block and then get kind of destroyed by Pyrowild Shaman, but I don't think there's any real way to get around that. So now, next turn, presumably, Niv is going to be able to get back the Pyrowild Shaman, because it's going to be hard to imagine a scenario where one of his creatures doesn't get through. Yeah, that Shaman is going to prove real trouble moving forward.
So whenever you can read whenever one of more of your creatures deals combat damage to a player, you can pay 3 and return it to your hand. There we see Rakdos Regiment coming in.
Yeah, and here, even though Daniel would be in a lot of trouble, even if he had killed the Snare Squad, he still would be able to actually block a bunch of Niv's attackers if the Court Street Denizen was in play instead. So I still think I like killing the Court Street Denizen, or the Snare Squad a little more than killing Court Street Denizen, but at this point, the Boros draw, especially, they just drew a mugging too, so I think they were kind of in the driver's seat regardless. Lifelink does let them fight fairly well, though.
Yeah, and he's holding a rubber belt Malka in his hand, so that he can do a very big swing.
Yeah, I mean, getting in for 6 points of lifelink, especially if Van Israel tries to block and trade, is pretty huge.
See, he gets in, drops Chiketti to 12, and pays 3 and returns the Pyrowild Shaman.
Though, the U.S. is probably going to have to cast Robo Maka if they don't draw anything else. Since
might have to pass it and leave both cards, both creatures back.
Yeah, I mean, they can't block the Boros Fleet or the Hazda Snare Squad in that situation because of the Pyrowild Shaman, though a 3/3 can block the Syndic and then trade for the Syndic plus the Pyrowild, which then gets brought back fairly soon here. It is tough, though, because you do really want to just get that lifelink in, because you know that they're going to tap the lifelink one when they attack.
Right, yes. This is your chance to be at 15, but the rubber belt is also going to get tapped.
Yeah. It's possible that they don't tap the lifelink one, I suppose. I suppose if they're looking to trade, maybe just giving the lifelink guy off the board, the Rakdos Regiment there, is worth it. But either way, it's tough to leave it back since you don't really know what's going to happen, and you know that they already have a combat trick in hand.
Team USA has decided that attacking is the way to go.
Yeah, I think that is pretty reasonable, especially since you're not really looking down the barrel of any really good trades. Looks like they might just hold on to the Robobelt Maka and just hope to draw something else next turn and try to race with Rakdos Regiment. But I don't know. I like playing the Maka more. I don't think you can afford to. Drawing a land that turn was pretty backbreaking.
And you also get to tap, sort of keep one of Niv's lands tapped.
Yeah, I mean, it does force the use of the plains, which could hurt Niv. You don't actually know.
Oh, that's a little bit filthy.
Yeah, madcap skills against a hand with no removal is pretty tough. That means Niv can attack for 12 this turn. Oh yeah, he's a little short, but if Josh had left it back, he would be at 12, but then Niv actually wouldn't be able to cast all of his spells and uses Hazda Snare Squad. He could still just cast Madcap Skills, tap, attack for, 9 damage, and then put him in a pretty commanding position. It's pretty hard to die off 14 to 2 3/3s.
Right, and Pyrowild is 2 to Blood Rush, right?
Yeah.
So
he could potentially just use it to Lava Spike this turn. I don't know if that's better than just holding it in your hand and keeping it for next turn. Especially since next turn, assuming you do use mugging, you can still extort off it if you want to pass up using the Hazda Snare Squad. You could also play Madcap Skills and extort, but then you're giving up using the Snare Squad, so seems like less damage overall. Snare Squad's your best creature, so putting the Madcap Skills on it is, a little bit of eggs, all your eggs in one basket, but it's also your toughest creature. It dies to the least amount of cards.
So that's now 4/4.
Now 4/4 has to be blocked by 2 creatures, which
Trigger.
Josh is pretty far, or Daniel's pretty far away from having.
That's
3,
9.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
9. You're at 6.
Yep, there's 9.
That was it. Go.
Mizzy Mortars would be a good draw here. I'm not sure why, but I suspect that's what the card they're hoping for. And they didn't just slam it, so it's not
Yeah.
Mizzy Mortar.
There was not a round of high fives
Yeah.
and USA chants.
I mean, the game wouldn't be over, but it would be really tough for Israel to come back from getting mortared and the U.S. going up to 9. Drawing a Dead Reveler is, put the U.S. back in a pretty difficult spot since they're facing lethal from a number of different creatures. They know about the Pyrowild Shaman. If they hit with the Ragement, they go up to 9. They can play a second blocker, then leave 2 back, clearly not unleashing the Reveler.
Right. But we know there's a mugging. We know there's a Pyrowild Shaman. That has the snare squad is
Essentially unblockable.
just...
Yeah.
You'd need to make so many Packrats to block that thing.
Yeah. So let's say they go up to 9. They play 2 blockers. Are they dead on board next turn? They are.
I believe
They are actually just straight dead on board if they do that.
Yeah.
Because the snare squad taps something.
No blocks.
They have to block Boros Elite because they can't block the snare squad. Then they take 6 from the snare squad plus Syndic, and then the Pyrowild makes it up to the full 9.
Yeah.
No unleash?
No.
You want a dice?
So
The Israeli team generously offers dice to Chiquetti
Yeah.
for his unleash counter.
yeah, I think and Israel could even just play the mugging just to be safe because that deals an extra 3 points of damage. If they'd drawn a planes, it would have been even worse because then they could
Yeah.
extort.
Extort, mug, attack, snare, advance.
I feel bad for the guys on the other side of the table here. This is the point where you're dead on board. You know they're going to go for it. You have to keep playing.
Yeah.
It's just a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
יש לו את ה-2-3 שעושה... אין לו, לא שאני ראיתי, יש לו את שעושה 3 נזק.
Right, and because you have to hope that, a conservative instinct kicks in, something happens, they decide to get you mostly dead and finish you next turn.
Yep.
וזה ניסה ל-1-4.
Things you know won't happen.
It is curious whether they had traded for Boros Elite instead of Skinbrand Goblin this game, what would have happened? Because the Boros Elite did get a bunch of hits in, so would have the Goblin. I think it might have arranged, or ended up
Yeah, that one can't block.
So there were
about
two.
equal.
There were 2 decisions.
Yeah, he triggered. So
There was that, and the decision to kill Court Street Denizen over Has the Snare Squad.
Yeah, which I still think I would have gone the other way. And looks like Team Israel advances.
Wow. Team Israel takes the 3rd game of the 3rd match against Team USA, eliminating the U.S., I believe, from advancing to stage 2.
It looks
here
like
at
Israel's
the
going to make it out
Magic
of their
World
pod.
Cup. Yeah.
Wow, it was actually a great match.
Yeah, our decks I think were very similar. Like you winning the die roll was huge.
Yeah,
Like,
just the
this
die roll
match-
won. The die roll won, basically.
Yeah, like we had options that came to like just blood rush onto this to drain you for 6
I
instead.
thought about it.
And like I almost like it just wasn't quite as good.
Great sportsmanship from the American team, sitting
Definitely.
there just like talking about the match. Just really like, it's very easy to be bitter. They were just eliminated, but Israel and Shahar Shenhar are still fighting in the World Magic Cup, which means it's possible for Shahar Shenhar to win 2 titles on Sunday.
To grab 2 trophies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure he's thinking about that at this point.
He would be a 2-headed giant.
And actually, since Shahar's brother's on this trip, he could have his brother carry one of the trophies because they look very, very similar.
Perhaps they could do some sort of Archie comics kind of thing. Since they do look a little alike, just give his little brother some, tall heels, and he could pretend to be Shahar and play
Yeah.
both matches at the
I'm
same
sure,
time.
I'm sure in 2 years his brother's going to be taller than Shahar, since that's what happened with Shahar.
Wow, that was just that was a tremendous match. That ends Return to Ravnica Team Sealed.
It does.
We're going to cut to 16 teams, 4 pools, and then those pools are going to play 3 rounds of Team Unified Standard to determine the top 8 teams that are going to play on Sunday,
Yeah, which will also be Unified Standard.
which will also be Unified Standard. So I think we're going to hear a little bit from Team Israel about their match and about advancing out of this really this is a pretty tough pod and a pretty tough matchup to face in the last round to determine whether or not you advance. So let's send it down to the floor and the capable hands of Sheldon Menery.
Everybody, Sheldon Menery down here in the feature match with Team Israel. That's short Niv, tall Niv, Eviatar, and Shahar. So first of all, in the last turn of that last game, there was a lot of discussion going on. What were you looking for?
Okay, so he was on 9 damage, and he had 3 lifelink. So we basically wanted to make sure that we are not dead next turn. So we went through all the options that we had. Before we drew a card, we decided what can we draw. Basically, we tried to figure out the turn of play that can make to win. Once he played the creature, we drew, I think, a mountain. So he said, okay, plan in motion, go and attack. It was basically a lot of math.
We just wanted to make sure not to make any errors in the final game of the game with deciding who will go to the next stage. Yeah. We just wanted to make sure everything is correct and as it should be.
Okay, so how much practice did you guys get to do leading into this event?
We made it
in limited. We did actually 0 because we're all staying they're in Israel and I was in the U.S. Actually, he was in Barcelona on vacation, so we couldn't even test if we wanted to. So yeah, we didn't do any limited testing, but we had a Facebook group and we did a lot of, we were very active in it, all of us, and our teamwork was really, really good in the sealeds.
We also had the help of Uri Peleg, which I'm sure everyone knows. So
yeah,
he helped us a lot, like decks. He also actually tested decks on Magic Online with us. So yeah, our decks are pretty good in the standard, and yeah, he helped us a lot there.
I think one of the highlights of our team is that we bring both experience, because we have players here that are playing for a long time and both rising stars who know and play and have huge skill in the game. And that's how we manage to work together as a team. We are not fighting at all. We are building together. Everybody's giving his point of view from what he knows. Some play more, some play less, but that's how we do it as a team.
All right, that's a unified Team Israel from down in the feature match area. They are well positioned for a run into day 2. I'm Sheldon Menery. Back to the booth.
Thanks, Sheldon. That was great to hear from Team Israel, and a little shout out to a former world champion from Israel, Uri Peleg.
Yep. He won I think the second Worlds I ever played in.
Yeah, 2007 in New York. And we are ready to switch things over and get to Team Unified Standard after a little bit of a break, and we are going to send it back to the desk, and they'll tell you how it will all play out the rest of the day.
You are looking at the World Magic Cup. Somebody is going to lift that tomorrow afternoon, and somebody will not be Team USA and could still be Israel. Zach, heartbreaker for the United States, but can't really complain. A decent match, and Israel advance.
Yeah, a solid match against worthy opponents. Yeah, can't really complain about your sealed pool either. You had 2 different teams with Packrat.
Indeed.
So, we got to play Magic, and a very good team advanced.
Fair. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to wind you through the scoreboard at the end of pool play. Pretty much we have definitive results right the way across the board. Then we'll have our halftime show, and then we'll get down to the team standard action for the last 16 teams. So here we go. Let's get to the scoreboard, and we begin with Pod 1. This featured Ireland, Estonia, Croatia, and Malaysia. So Ireland were the top seed, Estonia were number 2, Croatia 3rd, Malaysia 4th. Now that actually went completely to form. As we came into the last round, it was all about who could win. It was top v bottom and the 2 middle countries playing against each other. That was the same in all the pods. Ireland defeated Malaysia comfortably, and the same was true of the all-European clash, Estonia against Croatia. So Grga Petric-Maritic, Tony Portolan and co, they are out from Croatia. That means Hannes Karem, the most famous Estonian player on that team, advances. And Ireland, they were the overall leaders, remember, overnight coming into this event. And with 2 wins, it's a good chance there'll be a high seed, maybe a top seed, in the second set of pods, which we will bring you when we've crunched all the numbers at the end of the halftime show. So, Zach, Ireland and Estonia, the first 2 through. Do you see either of those winning the whole thing tomorrow?
You know, I really think you can put together a good argument for Ireland. They were the leaders coming in yesterday. They've defeated very, very good teams. They've played at a high level, and they've been against the best teams that the World Cup has to offer, the World Magic Cup has to offer.
And people were looking to knock them off their perch from the overnight lead, and looks like no one's done it.
Exactly. And so much of a tournament like this is just not losing your cool and remaining focused. They've shown they can do that.
Now, not losing your cool, that was really interesting you said that, because remember, they lost their first round.
Right.
All right? They got properly beaten by Estonia, and at that point you're thinking all of yesterday's hard work, maybe it's gone, and what are we doing? But they came back. Ireland and Estonia advance from Pod 1. Let's take you to Pod 2. This featured Singapore, South Africa, New Zealand, and Scotland. Now, it always turns out that when you have draws, things get a little bit complicated, and there's an awful lot of zeros and ones and numbers over there. But the key point was this: as we came into the final round, Singapore were playing Scotland, and they were on 1 point each. They knew that the winner there would get to 4 points, but meanwhile, you had South Africa and New Zealand already on 4 points. They knew that an intentional draw between the two would take them to 5 points, and that's why you see the little asterisk, the important star by the name. South Africa and New Zealand advance to stage 2. And I think, Zach, the big story, I thought New Zealand would do well, but hats off South Africa.
I think that's one of the big stories. I think the other big story is that Singapore, who came into today second overall, eliminated without a single match win. That just goes to show how this pod system, you can't just rest on your laurels. You really have to keep winning matches.
That is absolutely true. And of course, in that happening, that opens up some of the seeding possibilities for the second pod, because you've got a very high seed coming out. That means the number you're going to need to be a high seed in the next set of pods has just gone down a tiny little bit. So let's move on to pod 3. This is what we've just seen the climax to on air, in as much as the United States facing off against Israel. And in fact, this has gone completely, if you like, against the day one form book, because Israel were the bottom seeds. We knew it was a shootout against the US, and then Greece have defeated Venezuela. Venezuela have done terrific work here. They beat USA in round 1. Ultimately, that may have cost USA their place in the top 16. Then Venezuela lost to Israel. Here they've come up just short, and it is Simon Bertiu and the Greeks who are going to advance into the top 16. And yesterday, Zach, we saw in the last round all those 3-3 matches where we knew that the winner would most likely, unless you're Sweden, advance to day 2. And you saw Israel get in the back door. You saw England get in. You saw Belgium get in. And now here is Israel again, playing in the last round. The guillotine has been coming along behind them, looking to chomp them up, but they've survived another cull from 32 to 16. And that double for Shahar Shenhar is coming into view.
Yeah, I think if you're Shahar, you've got to start thinking about, okay, can I really take both of these? At the same time, there's a lot of rounds between now and then, and there's a lot of elimination that can happen between now and then.
He has 8 rounds to win before he becomes World Magic Cup champion and individual world champion. So, nonetheless, he's still alive, and Josh Utter-Leyton now has to go away. Forget about the World Magic Cup. He's done a great job, led the team well. They got to the day 2, which I think is a pretty solid performance for any team, regardless of the makeup. And then he has to sit down and get ready for a big match tomorrow against Reed Duke in the semi-finals of the World Championships. All right, let's move on to Pod 4. And this featured what looked like 2 very heavy hitters, and it did indeed pan out that way. Thailand and Luxembourg did wonderfully well to get into day 2. Seslip Champling, the Thai national champion, Steve Hatto and the boys from Luxembourg, the smallest country, for them to make day 2, Zach, an incredible achievement.
Oh yeah, a really great job to get to this point, and you've just got to look around your pod and be incredibly disappointed for Thailand or Luxembourg to have both France and Belgium there. I mean, these are arguably 2 of the strongest remaining teams. You just look at people's resumes, it's arguably 2 of the best teams going into the entire tournament. So for those to be in the same pod, and for them really to be bringing the heat, I mean, we saw Raphael Levy really just taking no prisoners on his route to a 3-0 finish.
Absolutely. I would be very scared of being in the French pod coming into the top 16. But as you say, it's one of those things where you sit there and, like, if you're Thailand, you say, hey, I'm a second seed, this is pretty good. Right. And then you go, Belgium, what are they doing as a bottom seed? Terrifying stuff. And it is the big two with the big experience on the big stage that have advanced, France and Belgium. Let's take you to pool number 5. This was the group of death, we styled it. The first one out of the door was England. Congratulations to them, though. They won their last round against Hungary. But the way this has worked, now look at that for seeding matters. This was precisely one of the scenarios we drew up for you. Exactly. The top seed, 3-0, Austria, wiped the slate with everyone. Everyone else eating each other within the pool, 1 and 2. But the second seed was Hungary. So Hungary advances. And they are quietly looking to do it all over again. Gabor Coxis, Thomas Nug in the top 8 last time around, and they're 1 pool play away from that. The one damaging thing, though, is that although they're through, and obviously that's all you can do now, with only 1 win as a second seed, I imagine they will fall to being perhaps a 3rd seed, and that can make a whole round's difference. You've seen them win the tie-break shuffle here. Right. I think that's bad news for Hungary. That 1-2 could come back to bite them.
Well, and the reality is you're not going to be able to go 1-2 over and over again and keep making it through the elimination rounds.
No.
So Hungary, you know, got to be excited that they're making it into the next stage, but they're going to have to really rally and put together a much better finish if they want to keep surviving today.
All right, so let us move on to pool number 6. Pool number 6, disappointment for Australia. They won their last round against Slovenia, and I'm glad they will not go away empty-handed from that pod. They're a terrific bunch of guys, had a lot of fun with them, and they conducted themselves admirably. But the two who we will see again, Iceland, still one of the big stories of the weekend. They have just quietly gone about their business. They know they're all relatively unknowns. They know that they don't have a huge stack of team top 8s behind them, and they're just quietly playing Magic and beating people. And here we see they're through with Brazil. Willie Adel already played in the World Championship. He's looking to play 5 days of Magic. Zach, do you think he will?
You know, I really do. What I was thinking about as we went through a lot of these past slides, if you look at the people who are advancing, you have a lot of veteran players. You have Marijn Lebart and Vincent Lemoyne of Belgium. You have Willie Edel captaining the Brazil team. You have Raphael Levy captaining France. You have a ton of experience on Austria. I mean, what we're really seeing, I think, here is these players really being able to galvanize their team.
Sure.
And if you look at who's advancing, and not only advancing, but advancing with the best records, 3-0, 2-1. 3-0, 2-0-1. It's teams that are captained by very strong veteran players.
That's a very interesting thing to watch out for as we head into the second set of pool play. Let us take you to what looked like a very complicated group. This is pool 7, and let me tell you what's happened here. Ukraine beat Mexico, so that put Ukraine through. The Czech Republic beat Turkey, so that put the Czech Republic through. And boy, oh boy, it's like you drew this up. Stanislav Sivka, the pro, the standout on the team. Right. He has led the team again to 3-0, and you've got to say, I really want to find out about this Czech team, because it was easy to dismiss them. You think of their famous players from the past, you think of Martin User not on the team from the present, and you just think, yeah, probably not. It's a great leader, and some guys who won a WMCQ. And I think these some guys are actually really, really good. Czech Republic just very solid across the board, 3-0 here.
Yeah, and again, like Ukraine advancing too. But one of the things I really like about the WMC is getting to see players under the spotlight that you're going to see a lot more of under the spotlight in the years to come. And I imagine some of the guys on the Czech Republic team fit that bill.
Absolutely. All right, one more to bring you to see who comes through. Well, this was one, there's no drama. We already knew after 2 rounds that this was going to be Chile and Belarus. In the end, the Slovak Republic won the dead rubber match against Finland. Finland finished 0-3. Disappointment for them. Solid for making day 2, but never really got off the ground this morning. Maybe they had a rotten pool. I mean, you know, that can happen. Even with 12 packs, you end up in trouble there. Slovak Republic, even Flock, a former team world champion, couldn't get there in the end as the second seed. So Chile and Belarus advance. So by my reckoning, the 16 teams that you will see in Pool 2 play are, alphabetically, Austria, Belarus, Belgium, Brazil, Chile, the Czech Republic, Estonia, France, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, New Zealand, South Africa, and Ukraine. So That's all going to be confirmed. The pods will be revealed based on tie-break order, based on their points all the way through. So that's for the future. But first, Zach, I want to talk to you because you have been in R&D for quite a while over the last few years, and you are in no small measure responsible for the block that is just coming to a conclusion, Return to Ravnica, Gate Crash, and Dragon's Maze. And we're just going to take a very, very quick whip through some of the greatest hits of Inside R&D from the Ravnica block. I'm going to give you about, 20 seconds on each of these.
20 seconds.
Away you go, Zach. Let's see, what have we got?
It's like Mark Rosewater, 20 and 20. So you got Sphinx's Revelation, one of the defining cards in Return to Ravnica. We knew we wanted Azorius to be much more of a controlling guild this time. We gave it one of the best control cards we printed in recent years.
Yeah, and it's a real triumph that you can let people have so much fun drawing so many cards and gaining so much life, and yet opponents don't necessarily want to actually kill you.
Oh, well, and they might want to kill you either in-game or outside of it after you've Snapcaster Maged a couple of these back.
Fair. All right, so that's Sphinx's Revelation. What's next from Return to Ravnica?
We're looking at Loxodon Smiter. This is a card that when we had it in the file and had people from around Wizards come in to just play the set, could not believe that we just printed a straight-up 3-mana 4/4 with not just one, but with 2 major upsides. Yeah. You're seeing that card do valuable work across all formats, and it's one of the things we like about gold sets where we can just print straightforwardly appealing, exciting, context-independent cards.
Yeah, and I mean, even if I don't look at any of the words on the text and I just see 3 mana, 4/4.
Right.
I don't need any upside. What do you mean you're giving me 2? Crazy stuff. All right, next. Next we have Mizzium Mortars.
So Mizzium Mortars was a card, we knew that the overload mechanic was going to be a mechanic that was hard to push into constructed because, you know, just they're all split cards. But we wanted something that was really high visibility and really powerful. Mizzium Mortars fit the bill. You can either have a great, relatively efficient point removal spell, or for 6 mana you can Flame Wave. We've been really pleased with the work that the card's been doing, and you know, we've been pleased when you see the mixer removal in decks like Jund. You can't just jam 4 of this card, but you really get a good assortment of removal spells.
And do you like it when there are cards that you've designed and made inside R&D where they are what we might call 1-ofs or 2-ofs? Does that sort of fill a sort of, I'm really happy that that's happening?
Oh, very much so. One of the things we've been trying to do recently is to sort of narrow the band of power of cards in Standard. We don't really like, although this invariably happens somewhat, when you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 really good cards, and everything else is just quite a bit below that. We like for as many cards as possible, or as many that are good for the Standard environment, to cluster around the center, give you a lot of options, and open up possibility in deck building.
Okay, so we're still with Return to Ravnica, the first part of the block, and we move on to Grizzly Salvage, and you've chosen a common instant. All right.
Yeah, so Grizzly Salvage was one of the cards, you know, we wanted something that felt Golgari that can enable a lot of decks. And like every deck, you know, you have the big featured cards that we've been talking about, but you also have the enablers, the workhorses that do work. Grizzly Salvage in Limited, you know, helped you find some of your best cards and also filled your graveyard full of scavenge cards. But in Constructed, playing very well with the Innistrad Block's graveyard theme, it enabled the Junk Reanimator deck that was a fixture of Standard for the last several months. So it's an innocuous little card like this that can do a lot of work for an environment.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, there you are, you know, it's just a 2-mana common from a set from almost a year ago, and yet week in, week out, it's doing a pretty important thing within a metagame. All right, what's up next? Let's take a look. It is uncommon we go to, and it's the Cackler.
So I bring up Rakdos Cackler not only because of its relevance in Constructed, it's good in both black and red aggressive decks, but to highlight an element of design that Eric Lauer did with Hybrid in Return to Ravnica that I have a lot of respect for. The idea being that Hybrid debuted in the original Ravnica block, and one of the things you can do with Hybrid cards that you can't do with gold cards is make 1-mana creatures and 1-mana spells, because you know a gold card requires 2 different colors. So we decided to have a cycle of 1-mana cards, most of which would be tournament playable, and we've seen the impact of those across several formats.
Yeah, Dryad Militant, for example.
Yeah, or even Judge's Familiar that Craig Wesco just won a Pro Tour with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd forgotten he played that. That's true. All right, let's see where we go next. So that is your Rakdos Cackler. On we go. And we're just taking a moment
attempting to go.
Yeah, here we go. The mythic rare Planeswalker. That's a bit of a mouthful, but then so is Jace, Architect of Thought.
So it's definitely hard to talk about a set without bringing up a Planeswalker. We know Jace is popular. Jace is central to the Ravnica storyline, and I'm really happy with how this Jace worked out. He was designed to metagame against Lingering Souls, but he's also proven to be a solid 2 or 3 up Planeswalker as a subsidiary card advantage engine in blue decks. And, you know, frequently you have to choose between him or the 5-mana Jace to figure out how you're going to gain your advantage. And we like those options to present to you in a given standard format.
Yeah, and I love the fact that the mini Factual Fiction is almost like a sub-little game, but it's a fun one rather than a mind-breaking one, which is what Factual Fiction often was for an opponent. It was just like, oh, you want me to choose these 5 into 2-part? This is almost like, hey, this is a bit fun. Oh, yeah, I'll put this over there and these over there.
Which makes sense for a Planeswalker that plays mind games with you.
All right, next. We are into Gatecrash. Tell me about Domri Raid.
So speaking of Planeswalkers, this is like my favorite card in the entire block. He's a 3-mana Planeswalker. We've seen play in Modern, he's seen a little bit of play in Legacy, he sees play in Standard, and he sees play in Block. He's good in a wide variety of decks, but the cool thing about him is he feels Gruul. He's not just a red-green Planeswalker, he's from the Gruul Guild. You can see him with his Bone Club there. What does he want you to do? Fill your deck full of creatures and then fight with them.
Seems perfectly fair. Next, from Gatecrash, we move on to the uncommon Cartel Aristocrat.
So Cartel Aristocrat obviously won a Pro Tour in the hands of Tom Martell. I bring this card up because it's, again, deceptively good. It can sneak through damage. It can be a sack outlet. Sam Black, when this card was printed, ran up to me. He's like, did you intend for this to be constructed? I'm like, well, what have you done with it so far? But that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's a fantastic card. And I love cards that feel fine in Limited, but then get to be absurd in Constructed. But they're almost like 2 different cards. I never think when I play a Cartel Aristocrat in Limited, oh yeah, this is my Constructed Powerhouse Cartel Aristocrat. And I love cards like that. It's a great job with that one. On we go. It is uncommon. It's Experiment 1.
So Experiment 1 was a card we wanted to feature the Evolve mechanic and Constructed. Again, we've seen it in a really cool Simic aggro deck coming out of, I believe, the Australian team today. Obviously good in Naya. It's good in red-green aggro. It's good again in Modern. We added the remove 2+1/+1 counters ability at the last minute to be extremely powerful against Supreme Verdict. Which also adds just an incredibly interesting dimension to this card, which is that, you know, not only does it grow very quickly, but you can kind of ease back if you need to protect it. And it felt very Simic to us, this kind of natural adaptation and evolution.
Yeah, and the 2 is a lot. If you'd put it at 1, we would have gone, oh yeah, I just take 1 off. But at 2, that's a proper setback.
You've got to start all over again.
All right, next. It is Mythic Rare. Yeah, if you've played with Prime Speaker Zagana, this is a beating in Limited.
Yeah, well, Prime Speaker Zagana, part of the cycle of guild leaders, you know, with CC, DD, mana costs. And
by CC, you mean like Forest, Forest, Island, Island?
Precisely. That's kind of a holdover from the original Ravnica block. We wanted to redo those cards. They were really popular the first time around. I love Zagana because, again, it represents all kinds of growth. It's really popular in Commander, but good enough to play in Standard. And I mean, I was talking with a Croatian national team before this event, and they were just, I want to play a Prime Speaker deck. It's so exciting. And it's important to print exciting, powerful cards every once in a while.
Yeah, I was thrilled when I first played with Prime Speaker Zagana in Limited. Gatecrash continues with Burning Tree Emissary. Yeah, I watched a lot of these running around at Grand Prix Vancouver.
So one of the interesting things we're seeing now is actually a lot of the red-green aggro decks, such as the one that Brian Kibler 3-0'd with at the World Championships, actually don't play this creature anymore. But for a long time, it was staple to all of the Blitz decks that were running around. Naya Humans, Gruul Aggro, and it's one of the most aggressive creatures we've ever printed.
Yeah, Quebec City is, of course, what I meant. The other city in Canada. Sorry about that. Let's move on to Night Veil Spectre, the rare from Gatecrash.
And I have to bring this card up. It was featured pretty prominently in Pro Tour Dragon's Maze and Block Constructed. This is just my favorite card in the set. It's such a fun card. Where Demir, in most Spectres, you're just gaining raw card advantage. Night Veil Spectre slowly beats your opponent with his or her own deck. and it's just so exciting to reveal a card and have that suspense. And I just really love the gameplay of this card. So this is kind of my nod with my designer hat on to my favorite game-designed cards in the block.
Sure, nothing wrong with that. They play awesomely. Let's move on, and we are into Dragon's Maze with the Advent of the Worm.
So Advent of the Worm, designed obviously to enable the Populate deck that came out of Return to Ravnica. It's nice to have a cheap, effective tournament quality 5/5. But what I'm loving about this card is that so many decks are playing it just because it's good to have a 5/5 creature at instant speed. And you know, even out of Bant Hexproof, it comes out of the sideboard just to add additional threats. And I saw Carrie Oliver playing it at the World Magic Cup today. So sometimes you just print a nice, appealing, good quality card that can go on a lot of decks and see where it shows up.
What's next? Here we go. It is uncommon. It's Far and Away. Oh,
Sure.
turn sideways. Fair enough.
So I bring this card up to talk about the cycle of Fuse cards. Those were a cycle in Alexis Jansen's design file that I just absolutely loved. There were split cards in original Ravnica Block. We knew we wanted to bring them back, but we wanted to give them a little bit of a twist. What we called was Split Twine, because it was like a split card that you could entwine.
Entwine, yeah.
We're really happy with how these turned out.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. Let's move on. And next up we have Rurik Thar the Unbowed. Yep.
So if many people noticed, I put a lot of hate for Sphinx's Revelation in my set Dragon's Maze. There's
Yeah.
Sire of Insanity, there's Notion Thief, there's this guy.
Yeah, I
And,
noticed, Zach. I noticed.
You noticed a little bit.
I did notice
But
that,
what we
yeah.
saw, we saw Willie Edel bringing these in the World Championships,
Right,
because it's a
right.
card that beats up on the blue-white-red flash deck. Also a powerhouse in Commander where you're hitting people around the table. Gruul likes you to play creatures, and this guy is going to make you.
Absolutely. All right, we're nearly done. Let's see what we've got next. Renounce the Guilds. Well, that's kind of what we've done because we're in M14 mode at the moment, but tell us about Renounce the Guilds.
I see what you did there. So Renounce the Guilds, everyone that tweeted me complaining about Geist of Saint Traft, this is your love letter. This is an easy white way in Standard, multiple formats to deal with that, but it's also just a really deceptively interesting removal spell. It can deal with Falconwrath Aristocrat, Sire of Insanity. It's an example of my favorite type of card, which is an incredibly simple line of text, but an incredibly complex and interesting and dynamic gameplay pattern that emerges from that.
Any more for any more? In our greatest hits? Yes, there is. It's the Blood Baron of Vizkopa. Now, Zach, I don't know quite how this one works, but it seems to me, in all the time I've been playing Magic, this is the card that most people misread most often when they first see it. Because it does so almost infinitely more than you can possibly imagine it could be doing. I know it's mythic, but really, you keep reading and you keep reading and you keep reading, you're like, really? 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 Incredible card.
So the concept behind this, I called it Daywalker in playtesting. I wanted it to be an angel vampire, but we wound up with a vampire, so it sort of got there. But it's basically like kind of the good guy and the bad guy at the same time.
Yeah.
And the more it feeds, the bigger it gets.
One more card to show you in the RTR block greatest hits, and it is, yeah, I'm glad you chose this one last. It's the mythic rare creature. What a fabulous creature it is, the Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah, it's hard to mention the set without bringing this guy up. Really great creature, obviously puts pressure on control decks, but also just good at 2-for-1ing the opponent. Solid card to shore up mid-range decks. We saw a lot of Jund in our FFL and not as much green-white based mid-range, so we wanted to put this in there, you know, because it's best obviously when you can cast it early to encourage more green-white decks.
All right, that is Zach Hill on the greatest hits of Return to Ravnica Block. He was in there all the way, designer development, great stuff. Thanks very much to Zach. I'm going to let him go and get some lunch, and I am going to bring in Mr. Luis Scott Vargas, the latest member of the Magic Hall of Fame. Thanks a lot, Zach. Away you go. And Luis, come on in and join me. So we've got plenty going on here. A reminder, I'll just tell you once again, if you're just joining us, the 16 coming through: Austria, Belarus, Belgium, Brazil, Chile, Czech Republic, Estonia, France, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, New Zealand, South Africa, and Ukraine. Very soon, we will be in a position to tell you how the pools will go up. But just before we do that, Luis, I know that you're sometimes active on the Twitter sphere, as it were, or the blogger, whatever it's called.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so we've got 3 little videos lined up for you. First of all, let's take you back to the start of the week, the beginning of the World Championship, and see what people were saying out there in the world of zeros and ones. So that was day one in the world of Twitter. And then the players came back for 6 more rounds in the World Championship to try and get to the top 4. Let's see what the next 24 hours look like out there on your iPhones, your iPads, and all your other eyes. So that brought us to the end of the second air competition in the World Championship. Then, Luis, we took a little bit of a breather and thought, so that must be us pretty much done. But no, because then it was time for day one of the World Magic Cup. 71 nations. Let's see what Twitter had to say about day one of the World Magic Cup. So that's what the world of Twitter has to say about Worlds Week so far. But now the 32 are down to 16. I have Luis Scott Vargas with me, who is about to prove that he knows everything about Magic by accurately predicting the top 8 as we unveil. Oh, but you didn't know I was going to do that to you, did you?
Is that what you think I'm going to do here?
That's exactly what I think you're going to do. So here's what we're going to do. Let's get to the big board and show you the teams for the top 16. Here we go. Let's begin with our top seed in pool number 1. Here we go. The number 1 seed remains Ireland. That guarantees you, if you are watching in Ireland, that 2-1 from the boys, Sean Fitzgerald and friends, they will make it in to the top 8 and the quarterfinal knockout on Sunday. Let us see who is the top of pool number 2. Your number 2 seed is France. Raphael Levy, Stefan Soubrier, Timothée Simoneau, and Jan Guthman. Pool number 3, our number 1 seed, oh, I don't recognise them, I've got to be honest. Let's go to pool number 4. See who we've got there. Oh,
it's a mirror.
Oh, yeah, it's a mirror. You can't do that. I tell you what, let's come off graphics. Let's see if we can go in my ear with that. If people can give me the answer there. We're starting to miss some of those. Let's come away and I'll tell you if we can get some people in my ear to give you those full pod standings as we head in. I can tell you that what we are going to see, certainly I've got Chile going to be playing against South Africa in the first round. Felipe Tapia Becerra against Craig Leach, the national champion. So that's a national champion matchup. You're going to have Rodrigo Lopez against Bruce Raw. Roberto Castillo, who we also had on the desk here, was up against Andrew Wright. And then the coaches will be Fabian Lucero and Harris Fong. And Luis, let's talk just for a moment while we sort those pools out for you at home. Coaching. How does that work when you are as good as you are and you can't touch any of the cards? Are you passive? Are you waiting for people to ask you? Are you saying do this and puppet string them? How does it work?
So as we've alluded to before, I was the coach last year at the World Magic Cup because I went 2-5 on day 1 and all my teammates did better.
Sure.
So that meant on day 2, as we played through an M13 Team Sealed and then the Modern, Standard, and Block rounds, I was the coach. I got to watch all the matches. I got to, put in my input where necessary. And the way it mainly worked is I kind of left Kilber to his own devices in the block rounds.
That was brave.
Well, the block, as it turns out, that block format, 90% of the people in the World Magic Cup played Kibler's deck. It was the deck he had top-aided Grand Prix Anaheim with.
Sure, yeah.
So he actually just legitimately broke it. I wish he had done so at Barcelona, but... But that left me to kind of take a look at what Alex Bynek was doing playing Modern. He was playing the Tribal Zoo deck that he didn't have a ton of experience with.
Right.
Because it was actually the deck I had brought, also my cards.
Yep.
With the assumption that, if I was in day 2, I would be playing it.
Right.
As it turned out, I wasn't, and
Sure.
he was. So he knew what he was doing, but it was good to have me there watching and certainly offering advice when I needed to.
And when you say needed to, are you waiting for a moment where you see something, and I'm not talking about last year specifically, but as the coach, are you looking for a moment where you think, hey, something's about to go wrong here, and then you step in, or are you proactively trying to make sure that things go right?
It really depends on the situation, and I think in most of these cases, you can rely on your teammates to make a lot of the correct plays. On the other hand, if you see them about to do something disastrous, like we saw earlier in a feature match, one of the teammates was about to attack into a creature that would just be terrible to attack. He almost attacked a 2/2 into a 2/4, and his teammate stopped him.
Right.
There
Just
you have to jump in.
Straight hand on the table.
Yeah.
That's no red zone here.
Yeah.
Don't look. Not there. Not happening.
And so, I saw it actually on the floor too. One player almost attacked a master diversion into a 3/3 hexproof, assuming it could tap it. His teammate saw it, did not let him do that.
You don't
So
want
that's
to
one
do
part.
that.
The other part is, if you see a line of play you think is exceptionally clever, you can kind of point it out to them ahead of time.
Okay, so the next sort of factor of that is that this year you've had to juggle the team round. Someone had to sit out each format, but if you sit out the first format of the day, you have to play the second. And so, for example, we saw yesterday, Team USA, Josh Utter-Leyton sat out the constructed rounds at the second half of the day. But today, potentially, we would have been looking at a situation where you'd have to front load the morning to get your best player playing, and then maybe have to take them out. You're going to potentially have someone really good not playing when it's all for the top 8.
So Josh and I actually talked about this because he knew I had some experience in the area, and what we had concluded was it was good for your strongest player, usually your team captain, though that not universal, to sit out of the constructed rounds and play all the limited rounds. So Josh actually would have sat out the constructed rounds in the second half of the day if they had made it that far.
Okay. They have not, but these people have. Let's get back to the board. We're all ready for you. Sorry about that little technical glitch. It turns out 3.5 days of live magic, something has to go wrong sooner or later. I can tell you, as you see, Ireland number 1, France number 2, Austria are the top of pool number 3. Who leads pool number 4? Let's take a look. It's Chile, Felipe Tapia Becerra. Let's go to the second seed in pool 4. It's the Czech Republic. Back we go. Joining Austria will be Brazil. That's going to be a mouth-watering clash. Pool 2. France up against Iceland, all Europeans so far. And pool 1, joining Ireland, will be Belarus. They are really, really the outsiders here, but they are doing great work. And those are your second tier seeds. Let's see about the third seeds. Number 9 will be Estonia with Hannes Karem. The 10th seed, joining France and Iceland, it's Greece. What about pool 3? Who joins Austria and Brazil? Wow, that pool gets better and better. Austria, Brazil and Belgium. Pool 4, your 12th seed, South Africa. They will fancy their chances. Czech Republic and Chile are there for them if the South Africans can keep believing. Your bottom seeds, 13, it's New Zealand in a real sort of global group there. Pool number 3, who have we got? Ukraine, Belgium, Brazil and Austria. That's a beating of a pool. Pool number 2, France, Iceland, Greece, Israel. And pool number 1, Ireland, Belarus, Estonia, your 16th seed, but still alive, looking to go back-to-back top 8s. It's Hungary. So, Luis then, very, very briefly, give us 2 names to watch for in each of the 4 pools.
So in the first pool, I definitely look to Ireland. Not only to the top seed, I really like their constructed decks.
Right.
They have some innovative ones going there. And then I got to put my chances on Hannes Karem leading Estonia to victory.
Okay, so Ireland and Estonia are in 1.
For pool 2, it's actually pretty easy. I'm just going to go with France and Israel. We've got Raf Livy and Shahar Shenhar kind of leading the charge there.
Yep, that's fair enough. Now, pool 3, I'm almost tempted to let you off the hook there because anything you say is so likely to be wrong because that's a devastatingly good
That would
pool.
be our pool of death were we to choose one.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, you have to look at Austria there and just say they are on a charge. Holtzinger, Reitbauer, Mulbuck and Daninger, they are looking very, very smooth.
I think that they have the best odds, but I'm just going to go with Brazil and Belgium. I got Marin Liber and Willie Edel kind of bringing those teams up.
Fair enough. And then really the teams with the fewest world-renowned players in the group, South Africa, all of them are first-timers. New Zealand, you've got a Grand Prix winner in Walker McMurdo from Auckland. They've got a couple of other local GP top 8s. Sifka for the Czech Republic, Becerra for Chile. Do you go with the top 2?
It's hard to vote against Sifka. He's played so well this year.
Hasn't he just?
And I've got to go with Chile for family ties. That is part of my ancestry, so I'm going to go ahead and root for them.
This seems fair. All right. Those are the pools. Remember, seeding matters. If you're a top seed, 2 and 1 gets you in. If you're a bottom seed, if you keep on winning, it's in your own hands. Once you lose 1, then you're in trouble. So, 16 players remain. We are into Team Unified Standard. Thanks for being with us here at the halftime show at the news desk. It's time to take you down for Magic action. 3 rounds to go. Let's get back to the Magic at the Magic World Cup 2013.